There's some talk that I've heard around the investor Wall Street world, something called the debasement trade. And I think this kind of relates to what we're talking about gold. We're talking about the $38 trillion in debt. Many people, when they look at the debt, they say, okay, well, the U.S. has one of three options. They can either, how do you pay it back? How do you get right again? Well, you could default on it. That's not going to happen because then you get World War III. You could try to you produce your way out of it, meaning just our GDP just explodes from something. Maybe it's from AI, maybe it's from some clean energy revolution, I'm not sure. And we get our GDP up enough to not make it a big deal. And then the last option, which seems like it's kind of going this way, is we're just going to debase the currency until that debt's not a very big deal. This is leading people into saying, hey, something like gold, something like Bitcoin, these kind of fixed assets, maybe we just put our money in that, do the debasement trade, because it sounds like the government, the Federal Reserve, they're going in one direction and they're going to send fixed assets to the moon because they're not going to start printing. Do you think there's anything to that sort of debasement trade idea, investing in fixed assets? And is that kind of the path you see going forward for the government? Just, hey, we're just going to kind of slowly debase the dollar to try to stabilize the situation?
Yeah, I'd point out, right, like what's the other major fixed asset that everybody owns is housing, right? So like real estate. So yeah, Listen, I think the whole history of the world says that the government takes the easy way out and prints money, right? So right now, guys, like, to be honest, things are going fine. There's not really a huge, I don't think we're going to default on the debt. I don't think the debt's going to cause a death spiral in the United States. I think we're fine right now. Okay. But what happens if there's another giant pandemic? What happens if there's a giant war? What happens if, the attack on our infrastructure? What happens if, go down the list, right?
Jerome, load up the printer.
Yeah. So what happens is historically, okay, there's the public facing dual mandate, which is, stabilize inflation, like keep inflation low and maximize employment. Okay. That's the PR dual mandate. Okay. The real dual mandate is bail out banks during financial crises and make the government debt affordable. So, the reality here is, like, if there's an existential problem that comes up, the Federal Reserve is going to print money. They're going to bail out the U.S. government. And so, yeah, I think the history of the world says they're going to print more money. Inflation's still 3%. They're already cutting, right? They've given up the 2% target here. So, yeah, I would be concerned about currency debasement, but it's also been happening since the creation of the Federal Reserve, right? There's nothing new about. It's been happening since, the Roman government would debase the coins with cheaper metals. It would happen when people were clipping the coins to make them slightly smaller, right? So we've been debasing currency for forever. It's the easy way out. The last thing I'll say on this, okay, is that, and this comes from Milton Friedman, and there's things I disagree with Milton Friedman on, but I think this is such a key point, which is that when we talk about tax and we talk about government spending, like, really the actual tax is the spending itself. Okay. It's the spending that's the tax. As soon as you print the money and spend it, basically one of three things has to happen. One is you actually just pay for it by taxing it out of the population. Okay. Two, you borrow money, which just loads the tax on the future generations. Or three, you just debase the currency. Inflation is the secret tax, right? So it's actually the money that they spend that taxes all of us, because it dilutes our purchasing power. And yeah, inflation is the easiest way for them to tax your wealth away. So I think it's a kind of a key point. We talk a lot about like deficits and debt and everything else. It's really spending that's the tax. And you'll notice spending never goes down ever, right? Maybe the deficit fluctuates a little bit. Maybe we add a little bit less debt. Spending goes up every single year. So, I mean, that's the real tax on all of us.